They called it the Vindicator. The brass back on Earth called it a classified Black Ops cruiser, but in the outer rings, the legends called it a ghost ship. A thing that wasn't supposed to exist, not in a war this lopsided, not when humanity was losing. Captain Reese Calder leaned against the bulkhead of his command deck, sipping cold synth coffee from a dented steel mug. A deep scar ran from the corner of his left eye to the bottom of his jaw, a souvenir from Acheron 5, a place no longer on any map. The lighting in the bridge flickered with static from the jump residue, casting shadows across the worn-out faces of his crew. "We're through," came the voice of Lieutenant Mira from the nav console. Her voice had a twitch of disbelief. "We made it." Calder didn't answer right away. The jump had been blind, through a gravitational rift uncharted by even the Empire's most sophisticated nav AIs. No sane commander would have risked it, but Calder wasn't sane. Not anymore. "How far inside are we?" he asked, the growl in his voice carved by years of war, of losing men, of watching Earth's colonies fall one by one like dominoes under the boot of the Galactic Empire. Mira's fingers danced over the console. "Deep. Real deep. We're in the heart of Sector Aurum. Capital systems are 6 jumps from here. Defensive perimeters?" She paused, squinting at the readouts. "Still haven't noticed us." Calder smiled, but there was no joy in it, only bitterness. So much for the invincible Imperial net. The Vindicator had been a prototype once, a long-forgotten project abandoned by Earth Command when funding dried up and hope dried up faster. Calder had stolen it with a skeleton crew of deserters, prisoners, and dead men walking. Because if they were going to die, he figured, might as well die punching the bastards in the mouth. "Bring us into low orbit," he ordered. "Target, Arcanus Prime." Mira looked up, startled. Sir, that's a core world." "I know what it is." Calder took another sip. "And I know they keep their central communication relays there. We knock that out, every command link in this sector goes blind." "You think we'll make it out?" He didn't answer. Because no, he didn't think that at all. Outside, the ship's armor hummed with the heat of the jump. The stealth plating, a masterpiece of human desperation, shifted to match the stars, masking the cruiser's signature in a field of electromagnetic noise. The Empire's sensors, fine-tuned to detect the brute force signatures of traditional human vessels, saw nothing. Just empty space. Deep inside Arcanus Prime's orbital grid, alarms stayed silent. Fleet Admiral Zarin Voth threw the report across the room. "A what?" The junior officer flinched as the data tablet shattered against the bulkhead. A human warship, sir. Slipped through the Tarsus line and entered Aurum space undetected. We only caught the echo 5 minutes ago." "Impossible," Voth snapped. His long silver robes rustled as he stormed to the holotable, bringing up the star map. The image showed a red streak through defensive perimeters that should have been impenetrable. "Human vessels don't have the technology to cloak. They don't have the capacity for deep jump maneuvering inside gravitational rifts." The officer swallowed. "We believe this one does." "Designation?" "No registry." "Black hull, no insignia. Tactical intel codenamed it Spectre. Human chatter refers to it as Vindicator. 1 ship." "One?" Voth scoffed. "1 ship?" "It penetrated 4 layers of defense in under 15 minutes, all without detection. They only found out after the relays went down." Voth stared at the red path. Then it hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just an attack. This was a demonstration, a reminder that the humans weren't dead yet. Back on the Vindicator, the ship rocked from atmospheric entry. Anti-air batteries fired blindly, unable to lock onto the stealth signature. Calder watched calmly as plasma bursts zipped past them like flashes of white lightning. ETA to comm relay? He asked. 30 seconds. Shields holding at 80. Deploy strike team. We go loud now. Down in the belly of the ship, men prepared to die. They weren't soldiers anymore. Most of them hadn't worn a uniform in years. A few were former pirates, ex-cons, or ground troops who'd seen too many friends buried in forgotten moons. Calder had picked them for one reason. They had nothing left to lose. The dropship bay opened, revealing the burning gold horizon of Arcanus Prime. Skyscrapers scraped the clouds, sleek and imperial. Roads shimmered with automated traffic. Civilians went about their lives, unaware that death was about to fall from the sky. "Weapons hot," Calder muttered. "Let's make history." The strike hit like a thunderclap. The Vindicator hovered like a phantom above the relay tower. 30 men dropped in from atmospheric height, armored in scavenged gear, jetpacks hissing in the wind. They landed on steel platforms with the brutality of wolves, cutting through the Imperial guards before the alarm could finish ringing. Calder led them in. His rifle barked death as they surged through the corridors of the relay tower. Every floor was a bloodbath. The defenders were trained, elite even, but not ready for a suicide team who fought like men already dead. They breached the relay's core. Sparks flew. Fire ate the walls. Calder planted the charges himself, fingers bleeding from a graze. "Command, detonation in 1 minute," he called into the comms. "Target neutralized." "Sir, we've got Imperial interceptors closing in. You've got 2 minutes max before they get eyes on you." "Copy." Calder looked at his men. Half of them were down. Of the rest, most were limping or bleeding. He turned to Sergeant Cole, the only one still breathing steady. "Get him out," Calder ordered. "Back to the Vindicator." "You're not coming?" Calder shook his head. "I've got a transmission to make." Before Cole could argue, Calder shoved the data stick into his chest and sprinted for the roof access. Fleet Admiral Voth stared at the holofeed. A transmission was coming through, from the heart of Arcanus Prime. The signal wasn't encrypted. It was wide open for every military channel in the Empire to hear. Then Calder's face appeared, bloodied, half-burned, eyes like iron. "This is Captain Reese Calder of the human warship Vindicator," he said. "You thought we were beaten. You thought we'd crawl and die in the dirt while you carved up our worlds." His voice cracked with rage. "You forgot one thing. You're fighting humans." Behind him, the comm relay exploded, sending a shockwave that shattered half the city. The screen went black. Back on the Vindicator, the dropships returned, engines flaring. Calder wasn't among them. They didn't speak. They just looked at the smoking city behind them, at the burning sky, at the dozen Imperial patrol ships scrambling too late. And then the Vindicator jumped again, vanishing like a ghost. Across the Empire, command centers lit up with panic. How did a human battleship slip through? How did a relic of a dead race blindside the most powerful fleet in the galaxy? But Earth knew the answer already. Because when you push a man far enough, you don't get surrender. You get vengeance. The medbay lights flickered, same as everything else on the Vindicator. Power was conserved like it was breath underwater, rationed, recycled, resented. The smell of singed metal hung in the air, heavy as guilt. And in the far corner of the room, Sergeant Cole sat quietly, watching blood drip from his elbow into a stained towel. Reese Calder was gone. The man who had brought them here, who'd dragged a band of washed-out fighters back into the fire, hadn't made it out of Arcanus Prime. No body. No message. Just a static cut to black and a mushroom cloud rising behind the comm relay as the last image anyone had of him. But it wasn't grief on Cole's face. It was anger. He stood slowly, shoulder cracking, and limped out of the med bay. Down the corridors, crew members were huddled in small pockets, some silently tending wounds, others quietly watching the tactical feeds as the Empire scrambled, trying to seal the breach they'd punched. Cole moved past them all until he reached the command deck. Mira stood at the helm, face pale but steady. She didn't look up as he entered. "We're being hunted," she said flatly. "Every capital ship in Orem is scanning for us. They're blind, but not stupid. They know something got in. They just don't know how." "We can't go back," Cole said, voice low. Mira nodded. "We don't have to." She pointed to the nav screen, and Cole saw the path she'd plotted, through a string of backdoor mining systems, dead relays, abandoned belt colonies, places no sane ship traveled anymore. But it was possible. Barely. "You're going to finish what he started," she said, eyes locked on his. Cole didn't answer, but the silence was enough. The Empire's response came fast and brutal. On the moon of Kessari 4, entire districts were purged. The Empire claimed it was insurrection suppression, but everyone knew it was retaliation. A message. Civilians, farmers, children, burned to ash just to remind humanity, you don't poke the lion and walk away. But it had the opposite effect. Word spread, first in whispers, then in bold voices across encrypted forums and smuggler bands. A single human ship had breached the heart of the Empire, had humiliated them, and one man had stood in the middle of it all and said, "You forgot who we are." Now, they remembered. 2 weeks later, the Vindicator punched through a derelict debris field near the borders of the Dromus Expanse. The ship groaned from a damaged port engine. The outer hull bore plasma scars from an Imperial scout skirmish. Inside, Cole leaned over the engineering console, staring at the reactor diagnostics. They were running on fumes. Fuel cells were tapped. Secondary batteries were cold. They'd patched the shields with scavenged wiring and luck. But it wasn't enough. Not if they were going to hit the next target Calder had marked, the mining conglomerate at Xelon 9. Calder had believed that was the source of the Empire's supply of vibranium, essential for their cloaking tech, shields, and warp drives. You took that out, and the Empire's war machine stumbled. But the Vindicator was dying. "We need fuel," Mira said from behind him, arms crossed. Her face was thinner now. She hadn't slept in a day and a half. Neither had anyone. Cole stood up slowly. "How far's Thanix?" "Close. A week at burn speed, but it's Imperial controlled. Mining post, light defenses." Cole clenched his jaw. "Then we hit it." Mira didn't argue. She just nodded. There wasn't room for hesitation anymore. Thanix was a frozen hellhole, wrapped in white storms and tungsten towers. The mining platform was buried under 100 meters of ice, drilling through bedrock in silence. Automated patrols moved in predictable patterns. The local garrison was thin, lazy from months of quiet. They never saw it coming. The Vindicator dropped in like a vulture from the sky, disabled the comms in 30 seconds, and sent in the breachers. Cole moved through the facility like a ghost. No helmet, just a rebreather mask, and the fury of a man with nothing left to lose. When the garrison finally responded, it was already over. They filled their tanks, looted the data cores, scrapped every bit of vibranium from the transport canisters they could carry, and left the rest burning. The message wasn't subtle. Back in the command room, Cole watched the replay of the raid on the screen. Footage from one of the security cams showing his own silhouette walking through the main corridor, rifle slung, as flames rose behind him. Someone had added a line of text under the footage, graffiti style. "You forgot who we are." He stared at it for a long time. "I'm not him," Cole muttered. "No," Mira said from behind him, "but you're what we've got now." In the Empire's central command, The panic was turning into something worse. Paranoia. Fleet Admiral Voth had begun purging his own officers. Those who failed to anticipate the Vindicator's strikes disappeared overnight. Information was choked. Analysts were executed for reporting bad news. Governors were flayed in public broadcasts. But it wasn't working. Every time they thought they'd cornered the Vindicator, it slipped through. Every time they predicted a target, it struck somewhere else. It was playing a different game. And the people? They were starting to believe. On fringe colonies, children drew sketches of the black ship with red engines. Miners whispered that it was a spirit of vengeance. Some said Calder wasn't dead, that he was out there still, watching. But one thing was clear. The Empire wasn't untouchable anymore. Cole sat alone in Calder's old quarters. The room was dim, untouched since Arcanus Prime. A cracked photo sat on the desk. Calder with his brother, back before the war. Both smiling, human smiles, not the kind Cole saw anymore. A recording chip blinked in the console slot. Cole hesitated, then pressed it. Calder's voice came through. Tired. Gravelly. "If you're hearing this, I didn't make it out. Good. That means it worked." Cole stared at the wall. "I'm not here to make you a hero, Cole. You're not one. Neither am I. We're just men with too many ghosts." A pause. "But you know what they don't? You know what they've forgotten? That humanity doesn't break. You crush our cities. We build ruins into weapons. You bury us, and we claw through the dirt with bloody hands. You make us monsters, and we become the thing you can't kill." Another pause. Then, "Don't survive this. Win it." The message ended. Cole sat there in the dark for a long, long time, then stood up. "Mira," he said into the comm, "plot a course." And in the outer reaches of the Empire, another beacon flared to life, a weapons platform torn apart. The legend was growing. They hadn't just lost Calder. They'd created something worse. They used to say space was silent, but that was before the screams started. Not audible ones. Not the kind you hear. The kind that ripple through backdoor channels, intercepted transmissions, encrypted dark lines the Empire can't quite scrub out. The kind of scream that comes from a system going dark without warning. A surveillance outpost vanishing in a blink. A patrol ship's black box broadcasting a final, jumbled fragment of horror before cutting off. Vindicator. That name echoed now across the outer systems like a curse, a whisper carried by smugglers, rebels, deserters. No one knew exactly where the ship would strike next. But one thing was certain. It always did. And every time it did, more people joined the cause. The man who now commanded the Vindicator, Sergeant Cole, hadn't asked for it. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't even a man who wanted to live, if you cut him open and looked closely enough. But here he was, staring down the barrel of a new mission, Calder's last ghost still echoing in his head. Their next target was a listening station on the outskirts of the Sarican Fold, a space rift clogged with dead satellites and fractured moons. Station Delta V, they called it. Built into the bones of an old mining rig, it was now a black site, one the Empire used to intercept human resistance chatter and redirect fleet movements in real time. Knock it out, and the Empire would go deaf in the outer rim for at least 2 months. Mira slid the datapad across the table. Her hands were still bruised from the last fight. Station has 2 squadrons defending it, interceptors, minimal shielding. But there's a catch. Command crew's a former Terran, defected early in the war. Cole didn't blink. Name? She hesitated. Commander Julian Miles. And that was the first time Cole showed real emotion in weeks. He leaned back. That bastard's still alive. Seems so. Julian Miles, once a hero of Earth Command, the man who surrendered his fleet at Vega 14 without firing a shot, trading lives for a cushy seat in the Empire's bureaucracy. Cole had watched friends die in prison camps because of that betrayal. "Then we're not just knocking out the station," Cole said. "We're putting him in the dirt." Delta V floated like a wound above the Sarican fold. No planets, no trade, just silence and gravity wells that twisted jump drives into knots. That's why the Empire loved it. Remote, quiet, hidden, untouchable. Until now. The Vindicator slipped in under the cover of an asteroid drift, its hull barely holding pressure. The ship had been patched and repatched with plates from 3 different worlds. It creaked like an old warrior's bones. Cole stood in the dropship bay, suited up, helmet under his arm. His eyes scanned the squad. Fewer men now. Each mission bled a few more out. Some had no names left, just numbers, just pain. But they followed him. Not because they believed they'd win. Because they believed someone needed to hurt the Empire back. "Hit fast, hit hard," Cole said. "Cut the legs out, then we take the head." No one spoke. They just checked their mags. The dropships disengaged like silent daggers, plunging into the black. Julian Miles stood on the deck of Delta V, sipping imported wine and watching a looping holovid of old Earth. Green fields, oceans, the things he hadn't seen in 2 decades and barely missed. He was older now, softer, wrapped in the comforts of betrayal. When the alarm screamed, he frowned. "What is it?" His aide was already panicking. "Multiple bogies incoming. Breach in outer hull. Weapons fire detected." "Whose ships?" "Unknown." No IFF Miles dropped his glass. He already knew. Cole's boots hit the steel of Delta V's inner corridor, the force of entry rattling the walls. Gunfire erupted like rolling thunder, short bursts of fury. A guard screamed as Cole dropped him with a round to the chest, barely breaking stride. The team fanned out. Mira was with them this time. Insisted on it. Said she'd rather die swinging than rot behind a screen. Her pulse rifle sang in cold, mechanical rhythm. Room by room they moved like a machine, efficient, merciless. Cole never slowed. He knew where Miles would be, the central control chamber, where all traitors sat when the reckoning came. The last 2 guards outside the chamber barely had time to draw. Cole executed them both in 2 steps, then kicked the doors open with a steel boot. And there he was, Miles, pale and retreating behind a console. "You," he breathed. "I remember you. Cole, you served under—" "Shut up!" Cole raised his rifle. "You don't have to do this," Miles said quickly. "Listen to me. I know things. Locations, codes, hidden deployments. I can help." "You helped already," Cole said. "You helped bury my friends. Helped the Empire crush every last colony out there that didn't kneel. I watched a 10-year-old girl bleed out because of your surrender." Miles raised his hands. "I did what I had to. We were outnumbered." "So are we," Cole muttered. He pulled the trigger. 1 shot, right through the skull. Delta V burned in low orbit, its communications core hacked and rerouted. Before they jumped, Cole uploaded every classified frequency, troop deployment, and surveillance vector the station had stored for years. Mira cracked the codes in under an hour, then dumped them all across the outer rim in one glorious burst of revenge. A gift to the Resistance. And the last thing anyone ever heard from Delta V. By the time the Vindicator made it to safe space again, their ship was barely holding. 2 more men lost. Fuel down to a 1/4 tank. But they had something new now. Hope. For the first time since Calder's death, the crew didn't just feel like ghosts. They felt alive. Mira leaned against the wall beside Cole as he stared out at the black. "We're not just surviving," she said. "We're turning the tide." Cole didn't answer for a while. When he did, his voice was low. "We're waking the dead." And out there, in distant corners of the galaxy, the response came fast. Human warbands rose up. Smugglers started carrying arms instead of cargo. Defectors started leaking more intel, spooked by what the Vindicator was doing. The Empire was bleeding. Not from one wound, but 1,000. And in the darkness, every frightened soul now whispered the same name. Vindicator. The sky over Rythe burned red, not from sunsets, but from the fires of war. Once a thriving trade colony with deep orbital docks and shimmering fields of crystalline farms, Rythe had become a graveyard. Imperial fleets had scorched it 2 years ago, turned it into a lesson to all humans. Resist, and you'll be erased. But they didn't erase everything, not the bodies buried in the dust, not the anger, and not the man who now stood in the shadow of those ruined towers, breathing it all in like it was fuel. Cole stared across the skeletal remains of what had been a civilian shelter. Melted steel, scorched bone, bits of a child's toy, half crushed under rubble. He hadn't been here when it happened. But Calder had. That scar on Calder's face. He never talked about it. Just touched it sometimes when this place came up in conversation, like it itched from inside. This had been one of the Empire's punishment strikes. No military presence, no rebels, just a mass execution to break spirits. Cole bent down and picked up the toy. It was some kind of animal, plastic, cracked. His hand closed around it like he meant to squeeze it into powder. But he didn't. Command says they're bringing the brass, Mira said behind him. Rebel commanders, smugglers, a few independent Terran captains. Cole turned. Why? They want a summit. You're the invitation. He scoffed. Hell of a place for a meeting. They picked Rythe on purpose, as a reminder. Cole nodded slowly. Good. We all need a reminder. The summit took place underground, in an old irrigation vault beneath what used to be a processing plant. Makeshift lights dangled from exposed pipes. The stink of mildew mixed with old machine oil. It was a bad place to hold a meeting, which meant it was perfect. There were 9 other people in that vault. All armed, all staring at Cole like they were waiting to see if the stories were true. The first to speak was Commander Rek, former Earth Navy. Big, mean, half cybernetic now from an IED on Moros Station. He didn't sit down, just leaned on the table and looked Cole in the eye. You're the one who took out Arcanus Prime's relay? Cole didn't respond. Rek smirked. Not much for conversation, huh? Another voice cut in. Captain Naro, one of the few smugglers who hadn't sold out to the Empire. Thin, older, eyes like ice picks. We've all heard the stories. Half of them sound like campfire legends. Hell, I figured you were just propaganda. Cole sat. Do I look like propaganda to you? No one laughed. Rek grunted. What's your angle then? You planning to lead us? No, he said it flat. I'm not a leader, I'm just the blade. Rek raised a brow. Then who's the hand? Cole dropped a data chip on the table. This is everything we pulled from Station Delta V. Movement orders, troop deployments, manufacturing hubs. I've got 3 more raids lined up, each one designed to cripple their logistics chain. Naro picked up the chip. You want us to help? I want you to hit them where it hurts, while they're bleeding. Someone else finally spoke up. Younger, wary. And what happens after? When we draw attention? When the full weight of their fleet comes down on us? Cole looked around the room, then slowly said, Then we bury them in their own dirt. The summit ended in fire, because someone sold them out. The blast hit just as they were climbing out of the vault. A low rumble at first, then flame. The ceiling buckled, dropping a ton of steel and molten debris down through the access shaft. Mira got out first. Cole pushed the last of the delegates ahead of him, just as the platform behind them gave way. He caught a glimpse of the traitor, one of the Terran captains, face lit with betrayal, ducking into an escape tunnel as the charges went off. Cole would remember that face. The survivors scrambled out into the wastelands, coughing, burned, bloodied. 2 of the rebel commanders were dead. Rek lost a hand to falling debris. Naro's leg was mangled. Cole carried her himself. Didn't speak, didn't complain, just threw her over his shoulder and ran. Behind them, the Empire sent drones to finish the job. And that's when the Vindicator came back. It fell out of the clouds like a burning comet. Its cannons barked once, twice, turning 3 recon drones into scrap. The hangar bay opened mid-air, wind howling inside as the survivors stumbled aboard. The Empire didn't even have time to report the attack. Rythe was bleeding again, but not the way it used to. Now the blood belonged to the enemy. Mira sat in the dim light of the medbay, patching Naro's wound. Cole stood near the exit, helmet still under his arm, face unreadable. "She's lucky," Mira said. "Could have lost the leg." "She'll be useful," Cole said. Mira glanced up, her voice harder. "That why you saved her? Because she's useful?" Cole didn't answer. Because that wasn't the reason. Not entirely. He thought about Calder again. About how that man used to keep a list of every crew member's name, scratched into the back of his bunk panel. Every time one of them died, Calder would sit in silence, fingers brushing the names like a prayer. Cole didn't do prayers, but he remembered. Every name. In the following weeks, the Vindicator became myth. They hit shipyards in Oruscon Belt, where Imperial cruisers were still half-built in dry docks. They hacked a planetary tax network and rerouted a year's worth of Empire resources to starving rebel colonies. In one particularly bold raid, they stole the command codes for 3 Ark-class destroyers, then watched from a distant asteroid as those ships turned on their fleetmates and carved a hole in the Empire's rear guard before being blown to dust. Every time they struck, they left behind one symbol, spray-painted in blood red across walls, terminals, and hulls. A human fist wrapped in barbed wire, the old Earth resistance mark, reclaimed, reborn, feared. Fleet Admiral Voth had had enough. He stood in his war chamber, hands clenched behind his back, watching the holograms flicker. Map after map, system after system, flares of rebellion growing faster than command could suppress. And at the center of it, always, was the same cursed name. Vindicator. He turned to his aide. "How are they doing this? 1 ship, 1 man, 1 scattered rebel network, and they're tearing our arteries open?" The aide trembled. "He's not alone anymore. He's uniting them." Voth's eyes narrowed. "Then we remind them what unity costs." The next target wasn't a relay, or a station, or a shipyard. It was something deeper, more personal. The Empire located the refugee colony that Mira's family had fled to after the fall of Acheron. They wiped it out in one orbital strike. No warning, no broadcasts, just fire. By the time the Vindicator picked up the distress signal, it was already over. They reached the site 2 hours too late. The silence of space was real then. Cole stood on the blackened rock beside Mira, who didn't cry, didn't scream. She just knelt in the ash, hands clenched, head bowed. "They're coming for us now," Cole said. Mira nodded once. "Then let them. In war, every fire spreads until it finds a forest. The Empire thought they could burn down 1 ship, but they'd lit the whole damn galaxy instead." And now the flames were moving. The galaxy didn't sleep anymore, not since the Vindicator began its warpath. Colonial stations, abandoned refineries, ancient outposts long thought dead. They'd all begun blinking again on long-range sensors, not with Imperial codes, but with old Earth signals. Resistance chatter, guerrilla raids, pirate bands turning into makeshift militias. The dead were waking up, and in every intercepted call, every panicked Imperial report, every desperate cry for reinforcements, the name echoed like a curse. Cole. No rank, no title, just the man who was dragging the entire empire into hell with nothing but a rusted ship and the will to keep swinging. They were hanging by threads. The Vindicator's starboard engine had finally failed during the last jump, leaving them half-stranded in the outskirts of the Drine corridor. Their food supplies were down to ration bricks and recycled protein fluid. The crew had lost another 3, 1 from infection, 2 during the ambush on the Garros comms ring. And Mira. She hadn't spoken in days. She did her job, rewired consoles, managed repairs, slept in corners like a dog with nightmares. But the fire in her eyes had changed since the strike on her colony. Grief didn't hit her like a hammer. It was quieter, like a sickness eating her from the inside. Cole tried once, tried to ask her something, anything. She just looked at him and said, "Let's finish the list." So they did. The next target wasn't military. It was financial. A central vault station in the Draxian cluster. One of the Empire's oldest treasuries, filled with generational wealth, trade barons' backups, corporate black ledgers. The place was guarded by automated defense systems older than most of the known colonies. They weren't going to rob it. They were going to erase it. Mira cracked the location codes from an old smuggler's archive, while Cole worked with Naro, now limping but alive, to map a safe insertion point through the underbelly of the station. "Why this?" Naro asked, eyeing Cole as she smoked a bent stim stick. "Because when they start feeling poor, they get sloppy," Cole said. And he was right. The Vindicator came in under a debris shield, using engine sputters and short bursts of artificial gravity to mimic asteroid drift. They latched onto the bottom of the vault station with magnetic clamps and cut their way in. The breach team was down to 6. They didn't move like soldiers. They moved like wolves. Inside, the vault was a monument to excess. Gilded panels, marble floors, even synthetic gravity that made the rich feel like they were on old Earth. Mira's virus overloaded the internal defense systems in 30 seconds. And then Cole stood in the center of the main chamber, stared up at the core server tower, and said the words, "Burn it." They didn't steal a credit. They didn't touch the bars of precious alloys or the encrypted crypto walls. They just uploaded a worm that overloaded every transaction path, every backup, every redundant failsafe. By the time the Empire realized what had happened, 23 trillion credits across 9 sectors had been wiped from existence. Gone. Economies collapsed. Warlords panicked. Imperial governors who'd siphoned funds for decades now found their accounts turned to zeros. And while they screamed into their comms and sent kill squads in every direction, they all looked over their shoulders and wondered, where is the Vindicator now? Cole stood on the bridge later that night, watching old Earth maps flicker on a cracked console. Mira approached silently, her eyes red but clear. "I listened to his message again," she said. "Calder?" Cole asked. She nodded. "He said something I didn't catch the first time. Said, 'We're not here to make peace. We're here to show them what war actually feels like.'" Cole didn't speak. He didn't need to. Back in Imperial Command, Fleet Admiral Voth sat in a blacked-out war room, fingers trembling slightly as he scanned the latest casualty reports. Not from soldiers, not even ships, but systems. Entire economic networks were failing. Systems that hadn't seen unrest in 50 years were now erupting with protest, sabotage, riots, and all because of one ship. "Send the Dread Wraiths," he growled. His aide hesitated. "They haven't been activated in years. Half their crews are in cryo." "I don't care if they're frozen or dead," Voth snarled. "Wake them up, all of them, and tell them to find that damn ship." "Yes, sir. And bring me the man alive." The aide blinked. "Alive?" I thought. I want to look him in the eye before I rip his throat out. The dread wraiths, ghost ships of the old war, cloaked dreadnoughts equipped with silent kill beams, psychotropic warfare engines, and necro-core AI designed to break minds as well as bodies. There were 5 left in existence. Each one had been mothballed after the purge of the outer colonies. Now they were being reawakened, to hunt a ghost of their own. The first engagement came unexpectedly. The Vindicator had just completed a jump to the edge of the Varnus cloud, where they were planning to refuel at an old mining satellite. And then, silence. No sensor alarms, no warning. Just a single hull breach alert, and the sound of the hull groaning as if under the weight of something ancient. Cole was in the corridor when the power flickered. The emergency red glow bathed everything in bloodlight. He ran, rifle in hand, toward engineering. He got there just in time to see one of his crew pulled up through a gaping hole in the ceiling by nothing. No visible enemy. Just a flash of movement. Then gone. They fought in darkness for 8 minutes. Then Mira overloaded the power grid and pulsed a shockwave through the core panels. The thing vanished, like smoke on the wind. When they brought the feed back online, they caught only one frame, a black silhouette standing atop the ship's hull, watching them, before it vanished into the void. "We're not alone anymore," Mira whispered, pale and shaking. Cole nodded grimly. "They've sent the real monsters now." And still, he wasn't afraid. If anything, he looked ready. More than ever. He turned to the crew. Only 16 remained. The rest were either dead or buried in forgotten holes across the stars. "We've hit them where it hurts," he said, "but they're waking up now, sending their worst." Someone asked, "What's the plan?" Cole stared out the cracked viewport into the black. "We go deeper. We burn more." He didn't smile, didn't blink, just whispered like a curse. "We remind them again." And somewhere, across 10 billion screens and terrified whispers, a legend kept growing. The one ship that wouldn't die. The one man who wouldn't stop. They didn't scream when they died anymore. That was something Cole had noticed. Back in the early raids, on Arcanus, Thanix, Delta V, when a man was dying, he howled. Rage, pain, fear, something came out of the lungs, out of the soul, a final defiance, even as the lights went out. But now? Silence, like they knew it didn't matter, like the void was too loud to shout over. 2 more crew were dead. A systems tech named Vano, throat slashed open in the comms room. No alarms, no breach detected. And McKeck, one of the original drop troopers, went missing from engineering. All that was left of him was a smear of blood up the bulkhead and an open airlock hatch. Mira stood next to Cole, pale with exhaustion. "It's not just infiltration. It's manipulation, psychological warfare. That thing that boarded us, it didn't want to kill the ship. It wanted to make us break ourselves." Cole just nodded. "I've seen it before." "When?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "The Purge." On the edge of the Helian Rift. Empire let those AI monsters loose on unarmed colonies, slaughtered families, then turned their corpses into beacons to lure survivors. Mira's voice cracked. "I thought that was propaganda." "So did I," Cole muttered, until I saw a child blink in binary code. They didn't know the full name of the ship hunting them, only the call sign they'd pulled from a black box transmission intercepted by Naro's slicers. DS-07, Scourmuth. Dreadwraith, 7th generation, thought to be lost during the Eridani revolt. Now it was back, cloaked and moving like a shadow on water. Every jump the Vindicator made, Scourmuth was one step behind. Never close enough to strike outright, but always close enough to remind them they weren't alone. And worse, every colony the Vindicator visited for resupply or intel burned within days. No survivors. Only messages etched into the wreckage. Your fire will die in the cold. They needed help. But help meant trust. And trust was dangerous now. So Cole took a risk. He sent a signal, not to the Resistance, not to pirates, but to someone darker. The meeting took place on the broken husk of an old Titan-class barge orbiting Chiron's rift. The ship had been dead for 30 years, scuttled, gutted, and left to rot. But someone had made a nest there. Someone who'd lived in the shadows for so long, even the Empire had forgotten his name. He went by Drex, and he was the last surviving member of Black Cell, a unit so classified it didn't even exist on Earth's own records anymore. Cole sat across from him, weapon unholstered. Drex was old now, skinny, face like leather soaked in acid, but his eyes were clear, sharp. "I heard Calder died," Drex said. "He lit the match," Cole replied. "I'm just burning the house down." Drex laughed dryly. "You're not burning it. You're waking the whole damn graveyard." Cole leaned forward. "I need tech. Something old, something dirty. I don't want stealth. I want pain." Drex scratched his chin. "You're looking for Red Echo, then?" "What's that?" "Illegal before the war even started. Neurosonic disruptors. Causes seizures in anything biological, melts AI guidance systems, fries comms. It's a war crime in 3 systems." "Where?" "Buried in the Devereaux crypts. You'll need a dive suit and no fear of drowning." 2 weeks later, they had it. They lost another man on the recovery mission, Torres, devoured by a pressure collapse. But they got the crate out. Mira opened it in the underdeck bay, slowly, reverently. It didn't look like much, just a box of black cylinders wired with strange filaments, glowing faintly red. Old Earth tech. Probably illegal the second it was born. Cole looked down at it. "This'll hurt us too," Mira said. "If we use it on board, it might scramble our own systems." Cole touched the cylinder gently. "Then we use it last." The next encounter came during a mid-jump drift. The Vindicator had powered down to hide in an asteroid cluster, low on fuel, waiting for a trade contact to drop coordinates for a Black Line jump route, and Scourmouth found them. No engine signature, no impact, just systems dying. One by one. Lights flickered. Oxygen began to vent from secured compartments. Screams cut off by static. Then silence. Cole raced to engineering. Mira was already there, hands bleeding as she manually rerouted control from the neural net core. "I can't hold it. The ship's not responding." Then a voice, not human, not synthetic. A whisper broadcast through their own hull plating. "You don't belong here." Cole grabbed the Red Echo trigger. "Neither do you." He hit it. The entire ship screamed, not in noise, in vibration. Red waves pulsed through every wall. Lights burst, screens shattered, blood poured from crew members' noses as systems rebooted through pure force. And outside, the Scourmouth, just visible now in its cloaked form, twitched, shimmered, bled sparks, then vanished, retreated, wounded, but not destroyed. They'd survived. But barely. 3 more dead. The Red Echo had fried half their own AI systems, knocked out guidance, and shorted life support for 22 seconds. But it hurt the monster. That was enough. The Vindicator limped into an ice field near Theros, riding broken engines and grit. Mira collapsed on the command deck, whispering numbers under her breath, calculations for repairs, bypasses, patch kits they didn't have. Cole stood over her, shoulder wrapped in blood-soaked gauze. "We keep going," he said. Why? She whispered. Because they're still afraid. She looked up. And in her eyes, for the first time since her family died, there was something small but fierce. Hope? No. Hate. Wrapped in purpose. Across the Empire, things were unraveling. The Scourmouth had been blooded. The economy had stalled in 3 sectors. Rebellion was now outright war. And Fleet Admiral Voth? He'd gone quiet, disappeared into the core worlds, preparing something worse. But no matter what he planned, the story kept growing, the myth spreading, the curse taking shape, in every dark corner of every Imperial outpost. Someone had carved the same words into steel, into walls, into skin. We are not dead. We are the Vindicator. The core worlds were burning in silence. Not fire, not yet. But the kind of burn that crept through systems like rot through wood, delays in fleet coordination, protests in the industrial sectors, riots hushed before they hit the broadcasts. Whole battalions rerouted to suppress uprisings sparked by rumors of one man, one ship. The Emperor himself hadn't spoken in weeks. Fleet Admiral Voth had taken full command now. Absolute control. Martial law was declared in 9 sectors. The Dreadwraith fleet had been fully awakened, protocols overridden. No more jurisdiction boundaries, no more procedure. The order was simple. Kill the fire, at any cost. The Vindicator was hidden now, wrapped in silence at the edge of a forgotten moon in the Shivan Fold. The damage from the last encounter was worse than they'd admitted. The power cores were unstable. Auxiliary shielding was only functional in 30-degree arcs. The onboard systems were half-blind, and the bridge controls still sparked when touched. And yet, the crew was still there. Mira hunched over a fusion calibrator. Naro, confined to a med-rig but still typing out decoded transmissions with one good hand. And Cole, standing in the central chamber of the ship, staring at a war map carved directly into the wall. His own work. Planets scratched in, burn marks where targets had been hit, red ink where the Empire had bled. There were few marks left untouched. Just one. Varoth. The throne planet. Not the Emperor's palace world, not the shiny mask they showed to the press and diplomats. Varoth was the real heart. Where the Imperial elite lived, where the fleet was forged, where the Empire thought it could never be touched. It was where Calder had always wanted to strike, back when they first hijacked the Vindicator. But it was suicide then. No stealth route, no codes, no rebel network willing to help. But now? Now there were flames everywhere. Now the walls were thin, and Cole had the one thing no one else did. Nothing left to lose. He gathered the crew. All 16 of them that remained. Not one face smiled. Not one eye shined. These were ghosts in skin, stitched together by spite and gravity. Cole looked around. I'm not going to lie to you. We're not coming back from this. No one flinched. He paced slowly. We've done more than anyone ever expected. We've made them bleed. We've shown every gutter rat and backwater kid that they can spit in the face of giants. That they don't have to kneel. That fear can bleed too. He paused. They think their heart is untouchable. That their core systems are sacred. That their capital worlds will never hear the scream of a Terran gun again. His voice lowered. We're going to change that. A beat of silence. Then, one by one, every hand raised. They needed a miracle to reach Varoth. They got 5. One came from a shattered Earth naval satellite that still held the original warp codes for the first human fleets. Mira cracked its ancient encryption with a soldering iron and a prayer. The second came from Drex, who appeared out of nowhere on a dying relay station, handed Cole a stolen Dreadwraith clearance beacon, and disappeared before the coffee got cold. The third came from a smuggler named Garvin, who owed Naro a favor and flew them through an old gas tunnel beneath the core border, avoiding every Imperial scanner by hugging the flare vents. The fourth came from a whistleblower inside Veyroth itself, an old defector who used to serve under Calder. He leaked the planetary shield codes, knowing it meant his execution. And the fifth? That came from the Vindicator herself. Because the ship didn't die, even when it should have. They came in low, too fast, too broken, not cloaked. No, that tech had failed hours before, but they came in angry. Veyroth didn't have time to respond. The planetary defense grid picked up the incoming signature too late to power the surface weapons. Only the Skyguard reacted. 3 interceptors scrambled to meet them, but 2 were fried in seconds by direct kinetic slugs. The third clipped the Vindicator's wing. Cole didn't blink. He took the ship straight through the outer ring station, slicing it in half like a blade through silk. They landed the wreck in the Noble District, right in the Emperor's garden, and crawled out with guns in their hands and fire in their eyes. Fleet Admiral Voth was waiting. He'd known this would happen. He was waiting in the great atrium, clad in full ceremonial armor, with 50 elite guards at his back. His expression was calm. "You've made your point, Sergeant Cole." Cole stepped forward, smoke trailing off his armor. "I'm not here for a conversation." "I know." Voth smiled bitterly. "That's why I came in person." And the battle began. It wasn't a gunfight. It was an extinction. 16 humans against trained killers. And they won. Not because they were better trained, not because they had better weapons, because they had nothing. They threw themselves into the slaughter like men already dead. Naro bled out over the Emperor's fountain, laughing as she pulled the pin on a thermal charge that took 6 guards with her. Mira was shot twice in the side, but kept crawling, kept stabbing with a shattered ceramic shard until her hands were soaked red. Cole made it to Voth, face to face. Steel clashed. Voth was taller, stronger, had decades of training, but Cole had one thing the Admiral didn't: rage. He headbutted him. Once, twice, then wrestled the ceremonial blade from Voth's grip and buried it in his gut. Voth collapsed, mouth bloody, eyes wide. "You can't kill an empire," he gasped. Cole knelt beside him. "We already did." And then Voth died. The survivors, 3, maybe 4 of them, dragged Mira out of the flames. They planted the last of the red echo charges beneath the council spire, and when it fell, half the galaxy saw it. A transmission Cole had recorded played on every Imperial channel, hijacked by Drex and 1,000 other ghosts still fighting in the shadows. "This is for every planet you burned, for every name you erased, for every child you enslaved. We are not asking anymore. We're ending this. You are not gods. You're just kings on a hill, and we're burning your castle down." Then the screen went dark. The Vindicator was gone. Some said it was vaporized in the explosion. Some said it crawled into deep space, dying slowly in the dark. Some said Cole survived, limping through dust and ash, still killing, still fighting, still looking for the last man who dared call himself a ruler. But the truth? No one knows, because legends don't die. They just go quiet for a while. And wait. The stars didn't change, even after everything burned. They still blinked cold and indifferent across the sky, staring down at the ruins of empires, the bones of tyrants, and the whispers of ghosts. There was no great chorus of celebration, no parades, no declarations of victory, just silence. But in that silence, something shifted. Because the people, those who had watched the empire rise like a god and rule like a plague, finally saw it bleed. And once they saw blood, they remembered that gods could die. The Vindicator was never found. Search ships combed the debris fields around Veyroth for weeks. All they found were twisted steel remains, broken armor plating, burned-out fragments of ancient Earth tech. A boot, a melted helmet, a crushed datapad that still showed a flickering image of a clenched human fist wrapped in barbed wire. But no body, no captain, no crew, just a myth. And myths, they spread faster than truth. They say Cole survived. They say he walked out of the Emperor's garden with his ribs cracked and lungs bleeding, dragging Mira's unconscious body over his shoulder as the Vindicator's wreckage burned behind him. They say he vanished into the sewer systems below Varoth, where the old city still whispered in rusted pipes and rotten cables. Others say Drex pulled him out, that he owed Calder one last favor and snatched Cole from death in the chaos. Some swear he died on the steps of the council spire, holding off the last of the guards so Mira and the others could escape, that he smiled when the bullets hit him, that he muttered Calder's name with his last breath. But the truth? No one knows. And maybe that's better, because stories like his, they don't need endings. They become them. The Empire didn't fall in a day. That kind of rot takes time to bleed out. But Varoth changed everything. The death of Fleet Admiral Voth, broadcast to every world in the core, the burning of the council spire, the economic collapses, the military mutinies, it all started a cascade. The governors in the outer rings stopped taking orders. Whole sectors declared independence overnight. Civil war exploded across 3 star systems. The fleet fractured. Some joined the rebels, others turned pirate. The Emperor himself was never seen again. Rumors said he fled. Others claimed he was already dead. No one cared, because the people finally saw that the throne was empty, had always been empty. And Earth? She didn't rise again in triumph. She limped, broken, scarred, still bleeding from the years of submission and slaughter. But she stood, not as a savior, as a survivor. The resistance, no longer a ragtag web of whispers, became a movement, rebuilding from the ashes, binding together what fragments of humanity remained scattered across the stars. Former enemies stood side by side. Pirates became protectors. Smugglers became supply chains. Ex-Imperial soldiers laid down their rifles and picked up the burden of atonement. There was no peace treaty, no ceremony, just the long, brutal work of rebuilding. And everywhere they went, every colony, every shattered station and burned-out world, they left one mark, spray-painted, carved, inked into flesh, a human fist wrapped in barbed wire, a symbol of pain and defiance and hope. Mira survived, her wounds never fully healed. Something in her lungs still caught fire when the air got too thin. She walked with a slight limp, favoring her left side, but her hands never shook again. She took Calder's old logbook and made it into a ledger of fallen names. Not just crew, not just rebels, everyone. Every man, woman, child, pirate, traitor, and ghost who helped bleed the Empire dry. She carried that book across a dozen worlds, reading names aloud as cities were rebuilt. And every time she finished reading, she'd whisper one more, Rhys Calder, and Cole always together. Because in her mind, they were never separate. Years passed. The galaxy changed. The new power wasn't centralized. No throne, no empire, no command chain, just fractured alliances bound by grit and memory. The old warships were scrapped or turned into orbiting farms. The Dreadwraiths were hunted down one by one until none remained. The name Varoth became a curse to those who still whispered about glory. And still, no one found the Vindicator. Not in the black, not on the ground, not even a signal. But that didn't stop the stories. They say a ship matching her profile was spotted over the ruins of Acheron, hovering in the smoke, silent, untouched by time. They say it drops down to dying colonies and leaves behind crates of food, tools, sometimes weapons. No crew, no sound. Just a symbol burned into the side of every hull. The fist. They say a man with a voice like gravel and eyes like thunder walks into outlaw towns, leaves credits on the bar, and vanishes by morning. They say when tyrants rise again, and they always do, someone whispers a name into the void. Vindicator. And somewhere, that man hears it. Not every story needs a happy ending. But this one needed an ending that hurt, because it was never about saving the galaxy. It was about making them remember that humanity was not soft, not tamed, not forgotten. We do not bow, we do not break, we burn. And when the smoke clears, we're still standing.